Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're exploring the fascinating world of fan casting rumors.
It's really interesting to see how fan desires can sometimes influence casting decisions, especially for something as big as Harry Potter.
Right, and this time the rumor mill is churning around actor Ben Barnes and Sirius Black. We've got articles from the New York Post and US Weekly to look at, and even a pretty heated discussion thread from the Harry Potter on HBO subreddit to unpack.
Yeah, it's interesting how this fan casting thing has changed over time. With social media, it's become less about casual conversations and more like full-blown campaigns.
Definitely. Fans create mood boards and fan art, and even use AI to generate images of their dream casts. It's like they're building entire alternate realities.
Sometimes those realities actually end up on the screen too, which is pretty cool. For anyone who's not familiar with the term fan casting, basically means fans imagining their ideal actors for roles, sometimes even before a project is announced.
And in the case of Ben Barnes as Sirius Black, this whole thing has been going on for almost 20 years. It started with fans picturing him as a young Sirius, especially in those imagined prequels about the Marauders. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew back in their Hogwarts days.
People love to imagine those stories, and Barnes was often paired with Andrew Garfield as Remus Lupin and Aaron Taylor Johnson as James Potter. It's pretty wild how these fan castings just take on a life of their own.
I know, it's like the power of collective imagination.
Yeah.
Fans can build entire worlds around their favorite characters.
Absolutely.
And funny thing is, Barnes himself has even talked about it in interviews.
Yeah.
He mentioned being asked to sign Harry Potter books, given Gryffindor scarves, and even being told, "I loved you in Harry Potter."
Which is hilarious because obviously he wasn't in any of the movies.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. Barnes was first imagined as young Sirius, but now he's 43. The same age Sirius would be in the later Harry Potter books like Order of the Phoenix.
Right, and that ties in with the upcoming HBO Harry Potter series. If they're planning to cover the entire book series, this might actually be the perfect time for Barnes to finally play the role.
Exactly, and the Reddit thread we found is completely divided on it. About 40% of the fans think Barnes' age actually makes him ideal for a more mature Sirius after Azkaban. They think he could bring a depth that a younger actor might not be able to capture.
It's a good point. Sirius spent 12 years in Azkaban, which is a place that really drains the life out of you. So casting an actor in their early 30s to portray that might not be very believable.
Then there's the other 60% of fans on Reddit who were adamant that the casting should match the character's age in the books no matter what. They're pushing for actors in their early 30s like Corey Milcreast or Aidan Turner.
It really shows you the challenge of adapting something with such a huge and dedicated fan base. There are always going to be different opinions on how characters should be portrayed, especially when it comes to age.
For sure. It's a balancing act for the producers. They have to honor the source material, but also make choices that work for the story they want to tell.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how much weight they should give to fan casting in general. Should they actually consider it? Or just focus on finding the best actor for the role, regardless of what fans want?
It's a tough one. On the one hand, fan enthusiasm is amazing. It shows a real connection to the story. But on the other hand, studios can't just do whatever fans want. There has to be room for their own artistic vision and for trying new things.
It's definitely a delicate balance between respecting the fans and maybe surprising them a little too.
And speaking of surprising, it is kind of wild that Barnes is being considered for a role he never played. He's even said, "I find it very flattering, but it is quite weird to be kind of lauded for something that you never did."
Can you imagine? To be celebrated for a performance that doesn't exist, it's got to be flattering, but also a little strange. Right?
Totally. And while everyone's talking about Sirius Black, Barnes is actually on tour with his debut music album.
Right. Wow, so he's connecting with fans in a whole new way through his own creative work at the same time that they're all clamoring for him to play this other character.
It's like a crazy feedback loop. The fans are supporting his music career while also pushing for him to be part of this fictional world they love.
And it raises a really important question. If HBO actually casts Ben Barnes as Sirius Black, will it be seen as a win for the fans or as the studio giving in to online pressure?
That's a great question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how will Barnes handle it? Will playing this iconic role that's so tied to fan expectations help or hurt his performance? It's definitely something to think about.
For sure. This whole situation with Ben Barnes and Sirius Black is just one example of a bigger trend. Fan casting is a huge force in entertainment these days, especially for big franchises like Harry Potter.
And that makes you wonder how it's shaping the future of storytelling. Are we entering a time where fans have more power than ever before? And we're back still digging into this whole Ben Barnes' Sirius Black thing.
Yeah, before we were talking about how fan casting for this particular role has become a really interesting look at how the relationship between fans and creators is changing.
Right. It really shows how much fans care about these stories and how much they want to see their favorite characters brought to life in a way that matches their own vision.
Absolutely. And social media platforms like Reddit have given them a way to connect with each other, share their casting ideas, and really get behind the choices they like. It creates this sense of community and they have a stake in the story themselves.
It reminds me of when they were casting the Lord of the Rings movies. Fans were going crazy debating who should play Aragorn. Viggo Mortensen wasn't even on most people's radar at first. But look how that turned out. He became like the Aragorn for a whole generation.
That's a great example of how casting choices that might not have seemed obvious at the beginning can actually turn out to be incredible. Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective to really get a character right.
Totally. Yeah. And speaking of fresh perspectives, some fans on Reddit are actually saying that even though Barnes is older now, his experience playing characters who aren't totally good or bad could make him a perfect Sirius. He's got that kind of brooding intensity that could really bring out the complexity of Sirius's character, especially after all those years in Azkaban.
Yeah, there's definitely something to that argument. Think about Sirius's journey. He was sent to prison for something he didn't do. He lost his best friends and spent years completely isolated. That kind of experience would change anyone, make them more guarded and maybe a little jaded.
Right, and it wouldn't be the first time they changed a character's age for a movie or show. Alan Rickman was way older than Snape was supposed to be in the books. But he brought so much depth to the role, it's hard to imagine anyone else playing him now.
Right, and remember Gary Oldman, who actually played Sirius in the original films? He was already in his 40s when he took on the role, even though Sirius was a lot younger in the books, at least during Prisoner of Azkaban.
That's true. So even though some fans are really focused on the actor's age matching the books, there's definitely a history of playing around with age in adaptations. It really comes down to how well the actor captures the spirit of the character, not how many years they've been alive.
In the end, the casting director and the producers have to think about all these things, what the fans want, the character's story, the overall tone of the series, and make a choice that they think will work best for the story they're trying to tell.
It's a big decision, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And whatever they choose, they're going to get some pushback from some part of the fandom.
That's just what happens when you adapt something that people love. Everyone's got strong feelings about it, and everyone has their own idea of how it should go.
Speaking of how it should go, we've only just scratched the surface of this Ben Barnes' Sirius Black thing. There's so much more to talk about here.
Right. We need to think about what it means to cast an actor who's been so heavily fan cast for a role. Will it set a precedent for future adaptations? Will studios feel like they have to give in to fan demands?
And how will this whole thing affect Ben Barnes' career? He's already a successful actor, a musician, but will taking on this iconic role that fans have such strong opinions about be a good thing or a bad thing for him?
These are all questions we'll get into later.
And we're back, still thinking about Ben Barnes and Sirius Black.
It's amazing how one casting rumor can bring up so many questions about, fans' adaptation choices and the future of these big franchises.
Before we were talking about what it could mean for the industry and for Barnes himself if he actually gets cast.
Right, it's like this ripple effect.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if this could become a trend.
What if studios start feeling like they have to cast based on what's popular online instead of holding auditions and actually considering different actors?
Would that mean we get more authentic casting, or would it just stop people from taking risks and trying new things?
It's hard to say.
Are we moving towards a future where fans are basically co-creators helping to shape the stories they love?
I mean, the lines are definitely getting blurry. Look at how passionate fans were about the casting of Geralt in The Witcher.
Oh, yeah.
Henry Cavill wasn't just a popular choice. It was like fans demanded him for the role. And it worked out pretty well.
It did. Cavill was fantastic as Geralt, and the fans loved him. But that doesn't mean every fan campaign is going to be so successful. Sometimes an actor might seem perfect in theory, but it just doesn't translate to the screen.
That's the risk, right? You never know. Maybe the best performances come from the most unexpected choices.
It's like you don't know what you've got till it's gone. We might be surprised by who could really nail Sirius Black, but we'll never know if studios just always go with the most popular fan choice.
True. And think about the pressure on Ben Barnes if he does get the part.
Could he ever really live up to the image fans have been creating in their heads for all these years?
It's almost an impossible task, right? It's not just playing Sirius Black.
He's going up against decades of fan expectations, fan art, fan fiction.
Exactly. It's a lot to live up to.
And he has said it's flattering, but also weird, this whole thing. You have to wonder if that weirdness can turn into frustration or even resentment if he gets criticized for not being exactly what fans imagined.
Yeah, it's like this strange paradox.
Yeah.
The fans, in trying to support him, might actually be limiting him.
By putting him on this pedestal, they're setting him up for a really tough situation.
So where does this leave Ben Barnes, Sirius Black, and the whole idea of fan-driven casting?
It's hard to say for sure, but this whole thing definitely shows us the passionate and complicated relationship between fans and the stories they love.
We've talked about a lot today, the specifics of this Ben Barnes situation and the bigger implications of fan casting. But I think the biggest question is still, how's it all going to play out?
Yeah, only time will tell. But we want to hear what you think. Do you think Ben Barnes is meant to be Sirius Black? Is this fan casting thing a good thing or a bad thing?
Head over to the comments and let us know.
And as always, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the stories that matter to you.